Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, unironically, yesterday I went to Luneta Park in the National Museum. I came all the way kilometers before, coming from Pasig City. I took a train, I had some pickup coffee, I had lunch in Malate, and conveniently found myself near a train station to have access to the museum. What surprised me is that even decades ago, the National Museum continues to be free. Luneta Park looks brighter than ever, and all of the people who used to be street peddlers and people who were begging are now thriving as people who are able to sell souvenirs. Ladies and gentlemen, absent strategic planning, expensive urban planning, and the involvement of private corporations in partnership with governments, capital cities we see and love today would not be as developed. Places like Tokyo, Shanghai, Seoul, Hanoi, Manila, Bangkok, and all of these places became what they are because of rapid privatization of third spaces. That is to say, what once began as a mom-and-pop tea shop or matcha store grew into a food street that became a shopping district that ultimately became a city. We think privatization in itself is fundamentally good, and the effective of these have a trickle-down effect even to rural areas. Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are now experiencing rapid growth and development where the previously unskilled and undertapped lower classes are now having a shot to become middle class. This is what we see in Metro Davao, Metro Cebu, Iloilo, and Bohol, and even in other parts of the world. I question the counterfactual, which was quite missing coming from their side, because I'm not necessarily sure why, absent that privatization, all of this land would be utilized well. Let's just assume, right? Either I can assume it would be on the burden of the state to have to develop all of these things, or maybe the progress would be slow, if any at all, because of the increased cost of being able to develop anything. A few features on our side of the House responses will be integrated. Firstly, this is a regrets motion, and we believe or question their missing counterfactual. I hope the second speaker or an POI, we can hear that. Because the development we see today is imperfect, but it's still better than none at all. Because the nature of urban planning is that not everything is going to be privatized. Duh, right? Like the motion isn't, this House prefers a world where it's fully privatized. In fact, as what my POI suggested, these in many cases are built around cultural enclaves. Manila is largely built around the museum and Luneta. In many places in Shanghai or in Guangzhou, a lot of these temples are built around mini Chinatowns, mini little Indias, and cultural enclaves that ultimately serve as a place for people to be able to go. What started as a one-off food kiosk or cart eventually became a street that ultimately became the city that we see, because the nature of planning for third spaces is ultimately important. This is important in three ways. Number one, the big budget they have from local and international developers. Case in point, joint ventures with the Japanese or Koreans, investments to be able to make BGC, and Makati. Number two, the long-term time horizon to be able to develop these particular places. They don't just stop with a single food stall. They want to create a franchise. They want to create a food street with places like laundry, money exchanges, and places where people and tourists can go to be able to burgeon the growing industries of these people. Number three, influence to ultimately be able to alleviate the government from all of the pressure. Just like what the Cs and Ayalas are doing in the Philippines with SM and Ayala. They're able to build all over the world. In fact, SM is now building their 91st and 92nd store somewhere in Clark and somewhere in the provinces. I'd like to agree that ultimately made the quality of life of people in those areas better. I'll take it in a while. Second portion, right? Why exactly through the lens of privatization? It is because, absent that, the state has other more important things to do in terms of the opportunity cost of their time and capacity. They have to do diplomacy, adult stuff, dealing with Donald Trump, regulate our currency, deal with inflation, and even, especially in developing areas, which is critical and most important, do things like building public schools and ultimately public hospitals. As such, public-private partnerships and joint ventures with the private sector alleviate them of this work and ultimately increase the quality of life in these people. Because in these cities, these are often highly dense areas. You have large clusters of families cramped and living in single apartments in Hong Kong or in certain parts in the Philippines like in Tondo. Ultimately, people want a place to be able to make pa aircon, chill, and touch some grass. Before I proceed, POI, go. Okay, if we privatize it, then the National Museum is still the National Museum, but maybe it's owned by the Ayalas. Maybe it becomes similar to the Ayala Museum in Makati. That looks nice. The aircon's quite cold, and ultimately, they have a wider range of things. So, even in the worst case where these museums become owned privately and no longer be involved by the state, that becomes good. Because, especially in poor areas, you need these people to make the quality of life better. Third push coming from my side. How will this be done effectively? And what are the trickle-down effects that can help people? Number one, the first thing I have to say is the untapped potential of land. Meaning, in many cases, it's simply underutilized and the government is scratching their butt wondering what to be able to do with it. On our side, we're able to harvest resources, give these farmers jobs, and have a trickle-down effect to be able to distribute and sell vegetables and fruits. Number two, we ultimately are able to create more jobs and employ people. These people, who otherwise were druggies or beggars, now have every capacity to be able to make a living and adjust. Will it be hard? Of course. But just like what we see in enclaves like in Little India or Little Tokyo, these people are able to leverage on this consumerism to be able to drive there. Because people wanting to go to the museum, wanting to go to McDonald's are like, hey, I don't want to have McDonald's anymore. I want to try this local Chinese burger or this Japanese thing I otherwise not have tried. Thirdly, and this is the best part, market stratification. You can have cheap, mid-priced, and luxury options that ultimately allow these people a choice while also alleviating the government to be able to do the things they have to do. We are very proud to open this debate and stand on side negative. Thank you.